While researching places to vacation, I learned about a 3-day trek through Cotopaxi National Park, which is just outside of La Paz, Bolivia. After researching the weather in La Paz and throughout the Yungas, I found that it is between 35 and 85 degrees with cold nights and wind, so I thought it would be really smart to pack warm clothes and really good camping gear. I was able to find a round-trip flight through orbits for only $1,350. I departed Tucson on United Airlines Flight 6509 at 7:35 a.m., transferred at LAX to Flight 1520 American Airlines, and then finally on my last flight from MIA to La Paz, number 3012. I landed at 5:45 a.m., and the whole trip, including crossovers, only took about 10 hours. After landing in Bolivia, I took a cab to the bed and breakfast Hostel Republica, where I found a single room for only $25. Cabs are a really efficient way to travel in Bolivia because the fare is inexpensive and they are accustomed to tourists. A bed and breakfast is the perfect place for me to stay because I was only planning on staying 2 nights in town and they were not back to back. After resting for a few hours, I decided it was time to do some sightseeing before my hike. I decided to grab some breakfast in the B&B lobby, and it only cost me a few US dollars. A traditional Bolivian breakfast is salteña. A salteña is a small turnover filled with meat and potatoes. It is said that this comes from the wife of a previous Bolivian president who was originally from Argentina. After breakfast, I took to the streets, and on my way to the witch markets, I watched townspeople preparing for the October celebration of San Rafael, who is the patron saint of La Paz. During this festival, held on October 24th, the streets are filled with traditional Andean folk music, dancing, food, and decorations. I finally reached the witch market, which is a contrast to the modern feeling of La Paz. At the witch market, I found dried llama embryos, frog powder, and stuffed armadillos. The llama embryos are put in the foundation of buildings to encourage protection. Frog powder is given for money and luck, and stuffed armadillos are put above doorways to ward off burglars. After exploring the witch markets, I decided it was time to grab some lunch. For a more authentic experience, I decided to eat from local vendors instead of a sit-down restaurant. Lunch is traditionally the biggest meal of the day, so you have to have dessert as well. The first thing I ate was humitas, which are kind of like tamales. It is a sweet cornmeal wrapped in corn husk or banana leaf, usually containing onions, tomato, and green peppers. The whole thing is usually steamed but can also be boiled. Next, I tried chicharron, which is fried pork cooked with peppers and garlic and spiced with cumin and pepper. I had this dish sort of like a taco on a soft tortilla with chuno, which is highland potato, and corn. And because Bolivians have to have dessert with lunch, I had helado de canela or cinnamon sherbet. This all cost me only around $15. On my way back to the Hostel Republica, I stopped into the local market to get food for my hike. I got the typical dried fruits and the Bolivian version of trail mix, which has about the same ingredients but is less sweet and salty. I picked up tomatoes, carrots, peaches, plums, avocados, and plantains, which are all grown locally. Also, while buying some dried meats, I saw llama jerky, which is really popular, so I had to try some. All this cost me only about $35. Once back in my room, I decided to get an early rest because I knew I would have to get up for a long day ahead. The next morning I took a cab, which I could call from my bed and breakfast, to a patch just outside of La Paz. Outside La Paz, I met other tourists who are going on the trek, a priest and a guide. The priest is there to bless all hikers. The hike starts at La Cumbre Pass, travels through Cotopaxi National Park, and ends in Coracillo. Coracillo acts as the geographical transition between La Paz and the Amazon rainforest. Coracillo has a slight balmier and warmer climate than La Paz. Once on my trek, I saw a more humble side of Bolivia. I met highland people, llama herders, saw the rainforest and native wildlife. Because La Paz and the region around it is highly elevated, the hike was a bit more challenging, but because breathing could sometimes become strained, but overall it was a wonderful experience. Once in Coracillo, I didn't stay long because I needed to get back to La Paz. The most efficient way is by bus, and you go through the Yungas Road, also known as the Death Road. Although it is risky, most people cycle it or walk it, and it is a great way to see the Yungas Valley. I arrived back in La Paz in late afternoon and returned to the bed and breakfast. I got a rest because on my last day I was going to see the Iglesia de San Francisco. The Iglesia de San Francisco is a great example of the blending of cultures in La Paz. The Baroque facade is a combination of Christian and indigenous figures and animals. There's Spanish architecture, a neoclassical interior with cedar altars and gold leaf designs. And in the Plaza de San Francisco, there's a sculpture honoring the three main cultures, Tiwanaku, Incas, and Bolivians. There's also a tunnel that leads to the roof of the church, in which you can see all of La Paz. Finally, on my way home, I had a really good experience. It was authentic, and I felt like I learned a lot, and there was a lot of things I could take back to the United States with me.